Pembroke wasn't exactly a hotspot for excitement. The air tonight had a chilling bite, and the creeping fog seemed to drench everything in an otherworldly haze. The streetlights sputtered as if resisting the dense moisture. But if there's one thing you learn growing up in a small town, it's how to make your own fun. Leo was at the wheel of my car, fingers drumming along to the rhythm of some obscure track on the radio, a faint smile on his face. It was just past 11, and the town was already in a deep slumber. We cruised around aimlessly. It was something of a routine for us. It wasn't like we were notorious troublemakers, but boredom can make you do strange things. Most of our escapades were products of accidental enthusiasm rather than genuine malice. "Hungry?" Leo asked, pointing at the neon lights of the Quick Bite up ahead. "Starving," I admitted, my stomach conveniently seconding the notion. Minutes later, a burger in one hand and a shake in the other, the world seemed just a tad bit brighter, despite the fog. Leo glanced around us as if contemplating something. Then he took an unexpected right turn. "Where are we going?" I asked, a bit startled. Leo looked like he was fighting a grin. "I got an idea. Trust me." As Leo turned off the main street, the bright streetlights were replaced by a dim murk from just a few old street lamps. Their dull yellow glow blanketed an old, forgotten neighborhood. I glanced over, confusion knitting my brows. "Hey, why are we heading this way?" "You ever heard of the Rothwell estate?" he asked, a sly grin curling at the edge of his lips. "The abandoned place, rumored to be haunted and all that?" I replied, my voice laced with a hint of skepticism. "Exactly," he said, nodding enthusiastically. "Let's check it out. Just look at it from the outside." I sighed, feeling a twinge of unease. "I don't know, man. I'm not up for trouble tonight." "We won't get into trouble for just looking, Ethan," Leo assured me, his tone casual yet persuasive. "What could go wrong?" Famous last words. We drove deeper into the neighborhood. The streets, once home to laughter and life, now lay in a ghostly hush. The houses, their facades worn and peeling, the lawns overgrown, the windows boarded. Every so often, a flicker of movement from the corner of my eye would make me jump, a curtain swaying in an open window, or branches swaying in the wind. I tried to brush off the creeping sensation clawing up my spine. Finally, the car's headlights pierced through the fog, revealing the Rothwell estate in all of its morbid glory. It stood like a relic from a bygone era, its grand structure now a skeleton of its former self. Vines crept up its sides, and its once majestic windows were now hollow, sightless eyes staring back at us. Leo parked the car across the street. "Are we really doing this?" I asked, a weight of apprehension anchoring my voice. "It's just a quick look. Come on, don't chicken out on me," Leo chided with a playful nudge as we stepped out. The air was colder outside, or maybe it was just the ambience of the estate seeping into my bones. I followed Leo. The Rothwell mansion loomed ominously at the neighborhood's edge. It sat bordered by a dense, untamed forest to one side and an old cemetery to the other. This cemetery, isolated and eerie, marked the family's legacy. A garden of stone and memories where generations of Rothwells lay in perpetual slumber. As we approached, the mansion's stature became increasingly imposing. Its architecture, a blend of Gothic and Victorian designs, now succumbed to the ravages of time. towering turrets, which might have once graced the pages of a fairy tale, stood like jagged teeth against the moonlit sky. Ivy crept over much of the stone and brick as if nature was trying to reclaim the land. "Man, would you look at that?" Leo whispered, his voice barely above a breath. There was a majesty in its dereliction, a reminder of the grandeur this mansion once boasted when the Rothwells, the wealthiest family in the area, next to the Weatherbys, lived within its walls. I glanced towards the adjacent cemetery, its wrought iron gates entangled in an overgrowth of weeds. Crumbling tombstones jutted out at odd angles. It wasn't just a burial ground. It was a chronicle of a family's presence and eventual extinction in our town. Leo nudged me. "Creepy, isn't it? They say the Rothwells are all buried there. The entire family. A family graveyard right next to the house. It's like they never left," I mused. "Legends say that that's exactly the case," Leo said, eyeing the mansion with a mix of fascination and apprehension. "That and stories of cults, of deals with elder gods. They say that's how the Rothwells got so rich, and how they fell." I looked back at the mansion, the feeling of unseen eyes watching from its dark windows making my skin crawl. Leo and I trudged through the unkempt yard, our footsteps muffled by the overgrown grass and the occasional crunch of a fallen branch. "Man, this place, it's got the creeps written all over it," Leo murmured, scanning the towering structure. The moon cast a ghostly light over the scene, throwing long, twisted shadows across the lawn. "Yeah, spooky is one word for it," I replied. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. Seeing where Leo's thoughts were heading, I quickly added, "Yeah, but hey, we'll never really know what's inside, right? It's just best left to the imagination." Leo grunted. He was clearly annoyed at my attempt to steer clear of any ideas. He wandered towards the back corner of the house, where the overgrowth thickened, merging almost seamlessly with the woods. Peering into the tangled woods and then back at the house, Leo's voice dropped to a whisper. "Can you imagine what it's like in there? All the history, all the stories." "I'd rather not," I said, a bit more sharply than I intended. "It's probably just a bunch of old rooms filled with dust and spider webs." Leo shook his head, his eyes still fixed on the house. "Nah, there's gotta be more to it. Besides, that sounds cool to me." "Not to me. I hate spiders," I said, looking into the forest. "Hey, man, did you see that?" Leo's voice was suddenly tense. I squinted in the direction he nodded, back towards the Rothwell mansion. "See what?" "There." He pointed towards an upper window in the house. I swear that there was a light there, just for a second." I turned, gazing up at the looming structure. The moon, hanging low in the sky, bathed the mansion in a pale, eerie glow. It's probably just the moonlight or something reflecting," I offered, though my voice lacked conviction. Leo shook his head, his eyes not leaving the window. "No way, there's no glass in that window. It's all broken, see?" I looked again. I couldn't tell if he was right or not. To me, it looked like there was glass. But if there was no glass, then what had reflected the light? "It's just our minds playing tricks on us," I mumbled, more to myself than Leo. "This place, the stories, they're just getting to us." But Leo wasn't listening. He kept staring at the mansion. fascination and a hint of fear mingling in his gaze. And despite my skepticism, a chilling thought crept into my mind, whispering doubts and feeding the growing unease that nestled in my stomach. What if it wasn't just our imagination? What if someone or something was watching us from within those decayed walls? Leo's mood shifted as he snatched a rough stone from the ground. He threw it clumsily and the rock veered far from its intended target. "Dude, come on," I cautioned, a mix of worry and disbelief in my voice. "What are you doing?" He ignored me, his frustration tangible as he lobbed another stone, and then another at the window. Each throw was more forceful but no more accurate, the rocks thudding harmlessly against the mansion's ancient siding or disappearing into the overgrown garden. I couldn't help it. A laugh escaped me. "Have you ever considered trying out for the baseball team? I mean, as the mascot, of course," I quipped. Leo's face reddened, his eyes narrowing. With a growl of irritation, he stooped down for another rock. This time, his aim was different. His body coiled with a mix of anger and determination. The stone launched from his hand with surprising speed, hurtling towards the window with precision. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the still night, breaking the silence. Leo blinked, a slow grin forming. "Oh, well, I guess there was glass," he muttered. I looked around, scanning the dark fringes of the property. Leo, let's get out of here now," I hissed, my heart racing at the thought of someone hearing that crash. "Why?" Leo scoffed, his eyes gleaming with a mix of defiance and curiosity. "Well, Leo, someone could have heard the glass break." He rolled his eyes and stepped closer to the building. "Come on, Ethan, don't you want to see what's inside? Just a quick look." I felt a cold shiver race down my spine, and not just from the autumn air. "No, bad idea. We break a window and now you want to go have a tour. What if someone calls the cops? Like I said, who's gonna hear? This neighborhood is next to empty," Leo retorted. I grabbed his arm, feeling the urgent need to leave this place. "I don't know. I don't want to find out. Let's just go, okay?" For a moment, he looked like he might pull away, challenge me further. But something in my voice, or maybe the genuine fear in my eyes, seemed to get through to him. He let out a deep sigh, shaking his head. Fine, but only because you're freaking out. This would have been the perfect adventure, man." I didn't argue. I didn't feel victorious. Relief maybe, but it was drenched in unease. We started to walk back the way we came, each step away from the mansion easing the tightness that had gripped my chest. The gravel crunched under our feet as we put distance between us and the shattered window. I could feel the night air, cooler and slightly sharper now, as if warning us to move faster. Then it came. A dull, heavy thud on the ground behind us. Instinctively, we both spun around. My eyes spotted to the spot where a familiar rock lay, just inches from where we had been seconds ago. The very same rock that Leo had thrown. The one that had broken the window. It had come flowing back out from the gaping darkness of the broken window, landing ominously close. "How?" Leo's voice was barely above a whisper, and was laced with disbelief and now a hint of fear. "I don't know," I replied, my mouth dry, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Wind can't throw a rock back. People can. Someone must be inside the house. We need to leave now." My voice was firmer this time, more commanding. I wasn't just suggesting, I was insisting. Leo, however, was unmoved, his gaze fixed on the mansion with a reckless kind of fascination. "No way, man, not now. No way I'm missing out on this, no way. This is clearly a challenge. Someone is playing with us." I shook my head, feeling the weight of every horror story that I'd ever heard pressing down on me. "A challenge? This isn't a game, Leo. We don't know who's in there." Leo turned towards me, his expression hardening. "Since when did you become such a scaredy cat, Ethan? You're not thinking clearly. Let's just go before we end up in some kind of trouble," I argued, hoping reason would get through to him. He snorted derisively. "Trouble? We're not gonna get in trouble." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Leo, what if, someone is clearly in there, and what if they're dangerous?" Leo just shrugged, his determination seeming to swell in the face of my fear. It was like talking to a wall. Leo was already moving towards the house, each step feeling like a further plunge into something dark and uncertain. I followed, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't let him go alone. My eyes darted around, half expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows. "Leo, please think about this," I pleaded one last time. But he didn't stop. He didn't even look back. Watching him march to the back door, a knot of dread tightened in my stomach. "Man, let's just call it a night," I suggested, my voice barely hiding the tremor of anxiety. Ignoring me, Leo jiggled the handle of the back door. Locked. Undeterred, he cursed under his breath and stormed off towards the side of the house. I followed, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. The sense of being watched crept over me, slithering through my thoughts like a sinister whisper. I glanced around nervously, half expecting to see a shadow move or a face appear in the darkness. But there was nothing, just the oppressive feeling of unseen eyes. "Leo, seriously, we shouldn't be here," I hissed as he grappled with the cellar door. Frustration etched on his face. He grunted, pulling harder. "Stop chickening out, Ethan. We're already in this deep." "We're not in anything. We can just go, man." He ignored me. I watched him tug at the cellar door, the wood groaning under his force. Each tug felt like a direct challenge to the silent, brooding house. I should leave, I thought. Just turn around and walk away. But then, with a crack that echoed in the quiet night, the door finally gave way. Leo let out a triumphant laugh, the sound unsettlingly out of place. He flicked on his phone's flashlight and peered into the gloomy abyss of the cellar. "Leo," I pleaded one last time. "Dude, this is breaking and entering." Leo shot me a wild, adrenaline-fueled look. "No turning back now, Ethan. Are you coming or what?" The cellar door yawned like a dark maw, Leo's light only penetrating so far into its depths. I glanced back towards the safety of the street, my heart racing. Could I really leave him? With a deep, resigned breath, I followed Leo down the creaking steps into the cellar, every fiber of my being screaming that this was a mistake. The air grew colder as we descended. The darkness was almost tangible. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were intruding into a world where we were anything but welcome. Stepping into the basement was like plunging into another world. The air felt thick, heavy with a mustiness that clawed at the back of my throat. A chill slithered up my spine as I fumbled for my phone, my fingers trembling slightly. The light flickered on, casting an eerie glow across the room. Dust particles danced in the beam like ghostly specters. Leo was already across the room, his phone's flashlight bobbing like a will-o'-the-wisp in the gloom. I could barely make out his figure, rummaging through old boxes and discarded furniture. "You find anything?" I called out, my voice sounding small and intrusive in the oppressive silence. "Yeah, just junk," Leo muttered, moving on to another pile. "Who knows what's buried in all this crap?" My light skimmed over objects shrouded in layers of time and neglect. "Let's just go, man. I mean, this is messed up," I urged, my gaze darting around nervously. Leo finally paused, looking back at me. His face was a mask of thrill and adrenaline. "Just a bit longer," he said. I swept my phone's light across the room, revealing a staircase at the far end. The beam of my light landed on the walls. They were adorned with a series of old, dust-covered family portraits. Each frame seemed to harbor faces frozen in time. Their eyes were eerily lifelike, following my every move. One portrait in particular chilled me to the bone. A solemn-looking family, rigid and cold, with an empty chair in the foreground. It felt like someone was missing. Or perhaps something unseen was meant to fill that void. My attention was abruptly drawn to a heavy trunk in the corner. Bound in iron chains, its lock rusted with age. The wood was carved with strange, faded symbols that twisted and turned in patterns that made my head spin. Staring at them too long made my skin crawl, like 1,000 tiny insects were marching over my flesh. Then, my light caught a corner of the basement set up as a child's play area. A collection of old handmade toys lay scattered. Their shapes were distorted and unsettling. A ragged doll with one button eye stared blankly from atop a tiny wooden horse. The sight was so out of place in this dust-choked tomb that a cold shiver ran down my spine. Beside the toys, a chalkboard leaned against the wall, covered in childlike drawings. At first glance, they seemed innocent enough, but a closer look revealed subtle horrors. A pair of hidden eyes peeking from behind a crudely drawn house. Faintly sketched symbols mirroring those found on the trunk. They mingled with stick figures and suns. I turned to Leo, my voice barely a whisper. "This is freaky, man. Who lets their kids play in a place like this?" Leo, rummaging through a box of yellowed papers, didn't look up. "Families have their secrets, Ethan. Maybe they weren't allowed upstairs." His words trailed off, leaving an unspoken suggestion hanging in the air. My mind raced with unsettling thoughts. What kind of secrets were buried in this house? Crossing the creaky basement floor, I caught up to Leo, who was now fixated on the heavy iron-bound trunk. "Leo, we need to get out of here," I urged, my voice echoing slightly off the cold stone walls. He grunted, ignoring me, his fingers prying at the locks fruitlessly. The symbols on the trunk seemed to dance mockingly in the light of our phones. Giving up on the trunk, Leo moved to the portraits. I followed reluctantly, peering over his shoulder at the solemn family and the hauntingly empty chair. "Creepy, right?" Leo muttered, his tone a mix of fascination and unease. Yeah, it feels like they're watching us," I whispered back, my eyes darting from one portrait to another, half expecting one of them to blink. Leo, lost in thought, wandered away, scrutinizing every inch of the room. I trailed behind, my heart pounding louder with each step. We were intruders here, trespassing in a world of long-forgotten memories and shadows. "Leo, seriously, let's go." I tried again, my voice firmer this time. But my plea, once again, fell on deaf ears. He was now at a far wall, running his hands over the stone. Suddenly, a section of the wall yielded under his touch, swinging silently open to reveal a hidden passage. "Well, would you look at that?" Leo's voice was a mix of triumph and excitement. "Great, a secret passage in a creepy basement. What could go wrong?" I muttered, but Leo was already disappearing into the darkness. Sighing with resignation, I followed. The light from Leo's phone cut the gloom. What it revealed was a stark, surreal contrast to the forgotten desolation of the rest of the basement. Where the basement seemed to just be a jumble of items thrown together, here was the opposite. In the middle of the small room, almost reverently placed on a simple stone table, was a crystal vial filled with a swirling, iridescent liquid that captured the sparse light, creating dancing reflections on the dusty walls. "What's in the vial?" I whispered. My voice was barely more than a breath, a mix of fear and curiosity. Leo seemed deaf to my unease. "Leo, this is messed up. We shouldn't be here." I hissed, my eyes darting around the room, half expecting shadows to move. He didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on the mysterious vial. As the seconds stretched into a minute, a sense of foreboding grew within me. I turned and I made my way back to the main basement. The contrast as I stepped back into the larger room was jarring. The air felt a little heavier now. My heart pounded in my chest, my breaths coming in short, rapid bursts. Moments later, Leo followed. His face was alight with a mischievous, unsettling grin. "Cool, huh?" His tone, light and nonchalant, was a bizarre contradiction to the palpable atmosphere of dread enveloping me. My nerves were on a knife edge, and his casual demeanor only deepened my anxiety. Before I could muster a reply, a loud, unmistakable thump from above punctured the silence. It jolted both of us. The sound echoed ominously through the basement. I looked up, my heart leaping to my throat, scanning the ceiling as if I could see through to the source of the noise. Leo, however, reacted with a hint of that earlier excitement flickering in his eyes. "It seems like we're not alone," he said, a reckless edge to his voice. He moved towards the stairs with a purposeful stride. "Leo, we really should get out of here," I urged, panic lacing my words. But it was as if he was drawn by an invisible force, compelled to discover the source of the sound. Torn between fear and loyalty, I hesitated. Then, with a deep, resigned breath, I followed him. Each step felt heavier as I ascended the stairs into the house. Stepping into the shadow-draped hallway, I trailed behind Leo, each creaking floorboard an eerie note in the night's unsettling symphony. The air, thick with dust and disuse, clung to my lungs as we moved. The dining room materialized like a scene from a forgotten era. The large table, its surface covered in a fine layer of dust, was set with an elegance that belonged to another time. Fine china glimmered dimly in the sparse light, the silverware meticulously placed, each setting an invitation to a meal abandoned mid-thought. But it was the rotted remnants of food, a festering testament to decay and neglect. It sent a chill scuttling down my spine. Leo whistled softly, his tone betraying a mix of fascination and unease. "Well, it looks like they left in a hurry. I wonder what happened." "Yeah, like they just vanished," I replied, my voice a mere wisp in the room's heavy stillness. I looked at the decayed meal. The mold-veined bread, the fruit reduced to withered husks. This tableau of domesticity frozen in time. It was like witnessing the aftermath of a moment paused, the reasons and the stories behind it lost in the shadowy corners of the room. Then, I wondered why there was any food at all. The house had been abandoned for decades at least. Shouldn't it be gone? We left the dining room behind, venturing deeper into the house. Our footsteps were muffled by the old carpets. The next door we pushed open revealed a library, its walls lined with shelves of books. Leo's light danced across the spines of the ancient books. Books on local history, on folklore, filled the shelves. Their leather spines cracked and faded. Some tomes lay open, their pages yellowed and brittle. The scrawl of frantic notes in the margins hinting at a desperate search for answers. I picked up a volume on esoteric rituals, its pages whispering as they turned. "It looks like someone was deep into the occult," I said. Leo leaned over my shoulder, peering at an illustration of some arcane ceremony. "Yeah, weird stuff. You think any of it's connected to the house?" I shrugged, placing the book back with a slight shiver. Among the open books and scattered papers, I noticed newspaper clippings. The headlines screaming about missing locals and unexplained phenomena. "Hey, check this out," Leo said, pointing to a family tree sprawled across one wall. Lines branching out like skeletal fingers. Among the names and dates, certain entries were circled in red. "We're definitely not in a normal house," I muttered, my unease growing. Leo's phone suddenly flickered. We exchanged a glance, the unspoken agreement to leave this room, with its whispers of dark secrets and hidden truths hanging heavily between us. Continuing on our exploration, we treaded through a narrow hallway. Eventually, our journey through the house brought us to a grand entranceway, crowned with a sweeping staircase. Off to one side of it, a large living room lay. The room itself was a bizarre blend of time periods, and most of the furniture was draped in ghostly sheets. A grand piano, its keys yellowed, sat in one corner, while more portraits with eyes that seemed to follow our every move lined the walls. Everything was shrouded in shadows, the only light coming from the feeble glow of mine and Leo's phone lights. "Check this out," Leo murmured, his voice oddly hushed as he gestured towards a vintage radio, its surface a spiderweb of cracks and dust. Leo reached out and turned a dial. The radio crackled to life, the sound slicing through the stillness. It wasn't just static, but something more. Whispers, unintelligible, weaving in and out of a faint, eerie melody. The song played as if it was from another world. Notes stretching and warping before halting with a jarring abruptness. "What was that?" I exclaimed, my heart hammering against my ribs. Leo, though visibly shaken, tried to laugh it off. "Old wiring, maybe? These things pick up random signals all the time." But his explanation fell flat. I swallowed hard, feeling the walls pressing in, the whispers from the radio etching into my mind. "But Leo, there's no power in here. We should get out of here." I insisted, but my words were cut short. Another sound, distant yet clear, echoed through the house. The same thump that we had heard before. Without a word, Leo turned and headed towards the staircase, his steps determined. "Leo, wait!" I called out. But he was already ascending. Each step seemed to take him further into the house's dark heart. And with a sense of dread gnawing in my stomach, I followed. The staircase creaked under our feet, each step feeling like a descent into another, darker world, despite us heading upwards. Leo moved ahead, his phone light cutting through the darkness, leading us to the first room. The master bedroom. The door groaned softly as we pushed it open, revealing a scene that was unnervingly well preserved. The master bedroom, too, felt like a frozen moment in time. The large canopy bed with its heavy drapes and intricately carved headboard stood solemnly, draped in linens that, surprisingly, bore little dust. It was as though the room were patiently waiting for its occupant to return. My eyes were drawn to a large, ornate mirror dominating one wall. Its gilt frame was tarnished, but the glass remained clear, eerily so. I couldn't help but stare into it, and for a fleeting second, I thought that I saw a figure, a shadow moving within its depths. I blinked and it was gone, leaving me with a pulse racing far too fast. Did you see? I started, but the words died in my throat. Leo, too busy surveying the room, didn't notice my pause. "This place looks like a time capsule," he mused, oblivious to the mirror. I turned away, unease gnawing at me, and I noticed a dresser topped with an old withered bouquet of flowers. Among the decay, one flower stood out starkly. A rose, its petals vibrant and velvety, as if freshly plucked. It made no sense, and that lack of sense made my skin crawl. "Why is one flower still fresh?" I whispered, more to myself than to Leo. He shrugged, his phone's light moving on to a painting of the house's exterior. Maybe it's fake. But we both knew it wasn't. The petal felt soft and delicate under my tentative touch, a silent, living enigma among the dead. Exiting the master bedroom, we moved on down the hall. Leo, curiosity still ablaze, pushed open the door to the next room. We stepped inside to a child's bedroom that felt like a museum display for a childhood long past. The room was smaller. Toys lay scattered across the floor. 10 soldiers stood in formation. A ragged doll sat propped against a faded cushion. Dust motes danced in the beam of Leo's phone light, their ballet making the room feel alive in a ghostly, unsettling way. A chill ran down my spine as a music box on the dresser suddenly sprang to life, its melody hauntingly sweet, filling the room with an air of melancholy. The tune was eerily familiar, like a half-remembered dream. It played a few notes and then it stopped abruptly as I stepped closer, becoming silent as if it sensed my intrusion. "What the?" Leo whispered. My eyes drifted to the walls plastered with children's drawings. Crayon scribbles depicted a typical family. A house, this house, a dog, smiling stick figures. But in each drawing, there lingered an additional figure, dark and barely formed, its presence sinister. Unlike the smiles on the drawn faces, This figure didn't belong. It loomed in the background, its scribbled lines darker, more frantic. I swallowed hard, the unease growing. "We should keep moving," I murmured, eager to leave the room. Leo nodded, equally unsettled, and we made our way to another door, leading to a starkly different bedroom. This one was plain. The walls were bare, the furnishings minimal. It was like stepping into a void after the vividness of the child's room. A single bed with a faded bedspread, a nondescript dresser, a plain window shade half drawn. The room felt unnervingly empty, devoid of personality or warmth. "Dude, it's like nobody ever lived here. Not in this room," Leo said quietly, his voice almost a whisper, as if loud words might disturb the room's void-like stillness. "Yeah," I agreed, feeling an inexplicable sadness, a hollowness within me. The starkness was unsettling in its own way, a blank canvas that refused to reveal its story. We again moved into the hallway. Leo's hand hesitated on the next doorknob before turning it with a decisive click. We found ourselves staring into an antiquated bathroom, the kind you'd expect in a forgotten mansion like this. An old-fashioned clawfoot tub sat in the center, its porcelain surface gleaming. The contrast was startling. Almost everything else we had seen was cloaked in decay, at least a little bit. But this was disturbingly pristine. Odd, isn't it? I muttered, my gaze lingering on the tub, half expecting it to fill itself with ghostly water. "Yeah," Leo replied, his voice echoing slightly off the tiled walls. "It is. The whole house is." I backed out of the bathroom. Crossing the hall, I randomly chose another door, opening it to a room that declared itself to be a study. The smell of old paper and leather wafted towards us as we entered. Bookshelves lined with tattered books hugged the walls, and a large, cluttered desk sat under a window, moonlight streaming across its surface. It seemed to be almost a continuation of the library on the first floor. Maps of the local area, sprawling with markings and annotations, lay scattered among piles of paper and cryptic notes. "What is all of this?" Leo whispered, more to himself than to me, picking up a map and squinting at the markings. "I have no idea, but this feels wrong," I answered, my voice low. Leo nodded, carefully placing the map back on the desk. We should keep moving." We left the study, a sense of unease trailing us back into the hall. One door remained, its wood darker than the others. Then there were the stairs leading to the attic. The last door, it seemed different from the others, apart from the wood. A crude barricade of old furniture leaned precariously up against it, adding to the ominous feel. As I stepped closer, the faintest of sounds seeped through, a shuffling and whispers, riding on a wind that shouldn't exist within these walls. Unnerved by the sounds, I stepped back. "Well, I guess that's it," I stammered, trying to mask the quiver in my voice. The urge to leave, to escape this oppressive, this haunted place gnawed at my insides. "Well, there's still the attic," Leo said. We left the sealed door and its hidden whispers behind, heading towards the stairs that spiraled upwards towards the attic. Each step felt a little heavier than the last. A slow, reluctant ascent into a chapter of the house that I wasn't sure I wanted to read. As Leo led the way to the attic, each step up the narrow, creaking spiral staircase seemed to amplify my sense of dread. The oppressive atmosphere squeezed tighter around us, almost tangible in its heaviness. Every step I took felt like moving through thick, resisting water. "Almost there," Leo said. His usual bravado seemed to have waned. His words were more to convince himself than to reassure me. The dim light of our phones bounced off the walls, casting long, distorted shadows that danced around us menacingly. The top of the staircase gave way to the attic entrance, a small door hanging slightly ajar. Pushing the creaking door wider, I stepped into the attic, a vast, shadow-draped room that sprawled across the entire top floor of the house. The air was thick with dust. Leo's phone light cut through the darkness, unveiling the detritus of countless years. "Dude, it's like a time capsule up here," I murmured, my voice sounding alien in the hushed expanse. Leo didn't reply. His eyes were wide, scanning the room as if expecting the piles of forgotten memories to come alive. I couldn't blame him. The attic was cluttered with objects from different eras, each layer telling its own silent story of the past. Dusty trunks and cracked leather suitcases lay haphazardly, their contents, old clothes, yellowed photographs, and once cherished toys, spilling out. Pieces of furniture covered in tattered sheets were strewn about. "Look at this," Leo said as he lifted an old doll from a nearby box. Its porcelain face was cracked, one eye missing. "Creepy," I said. "Yeah, it reminds me of the one in the basement." "No, that one wasn't as nice," I said. Yeah, but it also only had one eye." Like I said, creepy," I replied to him. The walls and corners were studded with fading photographs and paintings, their subjects locked in eternal smiles or posed stiffness, seemed to gaze out with an eerie timelessness. One of a family picnic looked almost idyllic, until you noticed the somber, almost sad expressions of their faces. Another frame leaned against a box, and it showed a stern couple. The woman's eyes followed me, no matter where I moved. "Man, look at these," I heard Leo muttering to himself, carefully lifting a newspaper stack. The headlines were like whispers from another era, speaking of local events, wars, celebrations, and tragedies, all now just footnotes in history. We slowly moved through the attic, each step stirring up ghostly clouds of dust. We moved towards the nearest end of the attic, where moonlight filtered through the window that Leo had broken earlier. I felt the chill of the night air mixing with the dust-laden stagnancy around us. Shards of glass lay scattered, their edges catching the dim light. Leo, walking ahead of me, paused to peer out at the jagged opening. "Hey, check it out!" he beckoned, his voice barely above a whisper. I joined him, glancing out to see the yard below bathed in a ghostly luminescence. My eyes were drawn to the graveyard, where the marble and granite markers stood. The stone Leo had thrown earlier lay there, a mute testament to the night's surreal turn. I turned back to the room, my phone's light sweeping over the clutter. "This place," I began, struggling to find the words. "It's empty. At least it seems to be. So, who threw the stone back?" Leo shook his head, a mix of confusion and fear in his eyes. "Yeah, it doesn't add up. Everything here is ancient, untouched. Someone or something is messing with us." As we turned away from the window, the far end of the attic beckoned. Now, something felt off about it, so we advanced cautiously, our steps hesitant in the encompassing silence. Here, the clutter thinned, giving way to a space that was markedly different. The air grew colder as Leo and I approached the far end of the attic. Our phone's lights flickered across something unthinkable, wildly out of place amidst the decaying relics of the past. An altar stood solemnly before us. Its surface was stained with dark, unidentifiable marks and symbols that seemed to writhe and shift in the shadows. The same symbols from the library and from the trunk in the basement. Dried streaks crisscrossed its length, like remnants of some liquid once poured in a sinister rite. "Ethan, look at this." Leo's voice trembled, barely concealing his fear. I couldn't tear my eyes away. Surrounding the altar, black candles of various sizes, some reduced to mere stubs, were arranged in a pattern too precise to be random. The floor and walls around were adorned with more strange symbols. Scattered around the site were items that chilled my spine. Small bones that looked disturbingly humanoid. Bundles of withered herbs and oddly shaped stones, each placed in a deliberate pattern. "This doesn't make any sense," I murmured, my gaze fixating on a particularly sinister-looking stone. Atop the altar lay an old leather-bound book, its pages open to reveal arcane script interspersed with disturbing illustrations. From a distance, they seemed to depict rituals and unfathomable entities. The images a gateway to nightmares. The sight of it made my skin crawl. Then there were the portraits. They sat around the area, each depicting an empty chair or an empty room. It was as if they were waiting for their subjects to return. A dense, cloying scent filled the air, a mix of incense and something metallic that I couldn't quite place. My thoughts leaped to blood, but I banished them swiftly. "Dude, this is wrong," I whispered, the words sticking in my throat. The heaviness in the air felt like it was compressing around us, a physical presence that echoed my fear. Leo, inching forward towards the altar, didn't respond. His face was tight, his eyes scanning every detail of the horrifying tableau before us. The bones, the withered herbs, and the strange stones. "Leo, don't," I said, my voice barely a breath. Yet he continued his cautious advance. The air grew colder with each step that he took, the musty smell of decay mingling with the metallic tang that was now unmistakably reminding me of blood. He reached the altar and he paused, staring down at the open book. His hand hovered over its pages, trembling slightly. I wanted to urge him away, to scream that we should leave this cursed place. But my feet were rooted, as if the very house wanted me to witness what lay before us. "We shouldn't be here," I finally managed, my voice a ghost of itself. This isn't just some abandoned attic. This is something else, something." My voice trailed off as my eyes landed on the portraits again. Those empty chairs, those vacant rooms, they weren't just images. They felt like they were silent invitations calling to something or someone yet to arrive. The moonlight filtering through the jagged hole where the window used to be suddenly dimmed, like it was being strangled by an unseen hand. In that eerie half-light, figures began to coalesce from the shadows at the edges of the room, materializing as if spun from the darkness itself. "Leo," my voice a hoarse whisper barely audible over the pounding of my heart. Tall and shrouded in robes of dark, indeterminate color, the figures glided towards us with a fluid, almost unnatural grace. Their robes seemed to drink in the weak light from the window and from our phones, rendering their forms vague and insubstantial, yet terrifyingly present. The temperature in the room dropped rapidly until it felt like there was no heat left in the air at all. A chill ran through my whole body. It wasn't just the absence of heat. It was as if these figures brought with them a cold from the void, from the emptiness of space where light and warmth couldn't exist. A rasping breath like wind through dead leaves emanated from the nearest figure. No words, just a sound that seemed to resonate with my very soul, stirring something primal and terrified within me. "Leo!" My voice cracked, slicing through the suffocating air. The whisper-thin sound jolted Leo from his trance-like observation of the altar. His gaze swung wildly to where I pointed, and he finally saw them. The robed figures gliding towards us, shadows made flesh. The figures remained silent. Their presence was oppressive, an almost physical weight on my chest, suffocating and immense. It was more than fear. It was a deep, ancient dread that whispered of forgotten rituals and hidden dark truths. When Leo finally reacted, his reaction was visceral. A sharp, uncontrollable shriek that tore from his throat. The sound echoed. Frozen for just a heartbeat, Leo's eyes mirrored the terror that clawed at my insides. The figures, their movements fluid, advanced. It felt like a nightmare, one where you knew that you should run, but your feet were cemented to the floor. I wasn't frozen, though. Survival instinct, raw and unthinking, surged through me. I spun around, feet pounding against the wooden floor, each step a drumbeat in my frantic escape. The air felt thick, like moving through molasses, resisting me, trying to pull me back into the dark embrace of the hooded nightmares. The stairs. I was almost at the stairs when I tripped, my foot catching on an errant floorboard jutting out like a malicious snare. I hit the ground hard, the impact jarring my teeth. Scrambling up, terror lent me a surge of adrenaline-fueled speed. I risked a glance over my shoulder. Leo was behind me, his face ghost white, his eyes wide with fear. The cloaked figures swarmed closer, a silent, dark tide lapping at our heels. "Come on, Leo," I gasped, not sure if I was screaming or whispering. My voice seemed detached, floating somewhere far from this horror. The descent was a blur, each step a precarious dance with gravity. The old stairs groaned and whined under our weight, an eerie counter-melody to our panting breaths. We were a tangle of fear and urgency, plunging through the creaking, groaning house, trying to outdistance the nightmare that reached out from the shadows with cold fingers. We burst onto the second floor, our breaths ragged, our hearts pounding like frenzied drums. The hallway stretched out before us, a dim, foreboding tunnel lined with doors. The doors to the bedroom, the study. We didn't slow, our feet thudding against the old carpet. Leo's gasps were harsh in my ears, the sound punctuated by the sharp, unyielding whispers of our pursuers on the stairs behind us. Their presence loomed like a cloud, dark and inevitable. "Keep going," I hissed, barely recognizing my own voice. It was strained and taut with fear. As we passed the locked room, a shiver tore through me. From within, there came an inexplicable sound, a melding of shrieks and whispers, as if the room itself were alive with its own ghastly chorus. It was a sound that clawed at the edges of my sanity, urging me to glance back, but I didn't dare to. Every fiber of my being screamed for me to escape. The top of the grand staircase loomed ahead, an escape route so close yet agonizingly distant. Our flight was frantic, driven by the sheer, unadulterated urge to survive. We descended a whirl of motion, nearly tumbling in our haste. The entrance hall, a welcome sight, but one marred by the surreal, haunting strains of music. The radio in the living room was playing again, its melody a stark, mocking contrast to the terror consuming us. The notes twisting through the air, a sinister waltz that seemed to echo the beats of our frantic hearts. We didn't stop. We didn't dare to even pause. The music swelled as we passed, a bizarre soundtrack to our nightmare. The figures' whispers and our own heavy breaths mingled, creating a dissonant symphony that chased us, even as we dashed towards what we hoped would be salvation. The chase felt unreal, as if we had tumbled into a nightmare. I could feel Leo's presence behind me. "This way," I gasped, my voice barely a whisper. We were disorientated, our senses overwhelmed by the rush of shadows that flickered at the corners of our eyes, and the strange, unidentifiable noises that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Finally, we reached the entrance to the basement. Without hesitation, we stumbled down the rickety stairs. Each step was a jarring jolt through our already frayed nerves. The narrow staircase creaked ominously under our weight. We flew through the basement, weaving through the clutter. We found the stairs leading out, taking them 2, 3 at a time in our mad rush to escape. Each step upwards was a small victory. Bursting out into the yard, the cool, damp night air hit us like a slap. Our feet pounded against the soft earth as we ran for the front of the house, our lungs burning with the effort. The moon, a silent witness in the sky, cast a pale, indifferent light over the scene. We scrambled across the road, the gravel underfoot crunching wildly. The world seemed surreal, painted in shades of fear and moonlight. Our car was just ahead, a beacon of safety, an escape from the madness. "Hurry!" Leo's voice was ragged, edged with panic. We jumped into the car, slamming the doors shut with shaking hands. My breath was coming in sharp, ragged gasps, a stark contrast to the silence that had fallen around us. I fumbled desperately with the car keys, hands trembling uncontrollably. I jammed the key into the ignition. I twisted the key and the engine's growl sliced through the night's stillness. My hand trembled as I flicked on the headlights. As the car lurched forward, the headlights briefly illuminated the house. In that fleeting moment, Illuminated by the sweeping glare of the headlights, the house transformed. Figures, shrouded in those same dark robes, stood ominously to either side of the house. Their presence was silent, but their eyes seemed to burn through the darkness, watching us, marking us. Worse still, as the light washed over the windows of the house, I saw them. More figures in every window, just standing there motionless. Their faces were hidden, but I could feel their gaze, cold and unyielding on us. "Just drive, drive!" Leo's voice was a hoarse whisper, laced with a fear that mirrored my own. I didn't need telling twice. I floored the accelerator, the tires screeching in protest as we sped away from that cursed place. I couldn't shake the feeling that those eyes were still on us, following us even as we put distance between ourselves and the house. We drove aimlessly for a while, the car's engine a constant hum in the background. My hands clung to the steering wheel, knuckles white, as if the tighter that I held it, the further we could get away from the terror that was behind us. Streetlights flickered above, casting eerie shadows that danced across the car's interior. Every shadow, every unexpected sound from the car or the wind outside sent a fresh wave of terror through me. Leo sat beside me, his body rigid, every muscle tense. Neither of us spoke. What was there to say after what we had seen, after what had happened? Our silence was a mutual agreement, an understanding that some horrors were too deep for words. Eventually, the car's clock, glowing dimly in the dashboard's half-light, signaled the passing of time and a return to a world that felt distant and unfamiliar now. My breathing gradually steadied, the suffocating grip of fear slowly loosening. I glanced at Leo, his profile barely visible in the dark, and I saw his shoulders relax ever so slightly. "You want me to drop you off at your house?" I asked, my voice sounding foreign to my ears, rough and strained. Leo nodded, his voice a whisper. Yeah, thanks, Ethan." The rest of the drive to his house was silent, but the silence had shifted, less tense, edged with exhaustion rather than raw fear. When we pulled into his place, he hesitated for a moment before getting out. "Thanks, man," he said, not looking back at me. I watched him disappear into his house before turning the car around and heading to my own home. The familiar streets looked different now, each shadow hiding potential terrors, each turn reminding me of the night's nightmare. I pulled into my driveway, the house dark and unwelcoming. I sat for a moment in the car, not ready to leave the false sanctuary that it provided. Eventually, I mustered up the courage to step out. The night air was cold against my skin. It hammered home reality, a reality where fear lurked in every corner, and shadows held secrets far darker than I ever imagined. Later, lying in my bed, the ceiling above seemed a blank canvas for my racing thoughts. Shadows clung to the corners of my room, darker than usual, as if mocking my attempt at finding peace. The night's terror replayed in my mind like a broken film reel. The eerie silhouette of the cloaked figures, their sudden appearance, and the chilling pursuit. I shifted, trying to find comfort in my familiar sheets, but the fabric felt coarse, unfriendly. My mind wrestled with the shadows, searching for answers. Who were they? What did they want? The more I pondered, the further the answers seemed to drift into obscurity. A clock ticked somewhere in the house, each second a reminder of the creeping dawn. Sleep was a distant dream, chased away by what we had seen. I tried to rationalize. Could it have been a prank? But the icy grip of fear when we saw those figures, the palpable dread in the air, it was too real, too visceral to be dismissed as a mere trick. I turned over. The pillow was no longer cool. The room was feeling smaller, suffocating. The night outside my window seemed alive, a living entity that whispered of unspeakable things hidden in the darkness. The lingering feeling of being watched, the sensation of unseen eyes upon me, it was maddening. What had we stumbled upon? A cult? Ghost? My logical mind battled with the supernatural theories, trying to find a foothold in reality. Hours ticked by, and I remained wide awake. Eventually, I gave up trying to sleep, and I decided to record the events of what had happened. As I sit here in my living room, putting all of this down to share these events with you, I can see through the front window. 3 of those hooded figures are standing under the streetlight, just across the street.